minutes. So good afternoon to everybody who's joined the webinar. A warm welcome for this new series that we, Yamini and I, we're discussing. And this is supposed to be a one webinar, but then we decided that, there are many such conversations, especially for women who are navigating the workplace. So we're launching the Slow Down, Don't Stop series. So this is a series of conversation to provide women options and pathways as they navigate their careers. I said insightful for this webinar right at the start. I know it's a you overused word, but there are some topics and conversations where there's always the need for more awareness, always a need for more active conversations and insights. So today's webinar is one such. So I'm happy to have Meera Marthi with us. Meera, thank you so much for joining us. Meera is co-founder of Where Are India's Children? It is they're an NGO who work actively towards child protection. And of course, Yamini, who will host Meera. Yamini is co-founder and CEO of Vymo. And through today's session, what are we going to expect? There's going to be a conversation about adoption, the processes, and the legalities, various such things, and how it is a strong pathway to parenthood, and a lot more such. So, Yamini, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Meera, for joining us. I've had, I think in the last 2 years, I've probably had 25 to 30 conversations with colleagues, with peers, friends that I grew up with or worked with in the past on, the process for adoption or, in general, folks going through various different kind of challenges and then exploring if this is an option, right? And these are very basic 101 questions. There is a lot of lack of awareness on what it means. I think broadly, everyone in the country seems to know that it takes a long time, adoption in general in our country.
True. Yes.
Right? But they do not understand how actually simple the process is compared to, I'm a mother of two, so I can say this. Compared to actually, getting pregnant, giving birth to a child and raising them initially, etc. Right? It's usually bad-mouthed as a complicated process. It's not. It's fairly simple. And I've strongly urged folks going through a lot of mental stress in the process of starting a family because of, as a generation, we have chosen to have kids late. So infertility or fertility probabilities are low and there are risks associated with that, right? So I've always nudged people to keep this as an option. It's always a plan B. You can keep doing what you're doing as plan A. This is always a plan B. It removes the time pressure because while it's 2 to 3 years away, it's reasonably guaranteed for you, right? And by then you would be at the end of your wits if you're really keen on having a family and struggling with more biological ways of doing this, right? So I wanted to just simplify this for people, right? So Meera, thank you so much. Let's start with a quick little bit of introduction about yourself. What is Where Are India's Children, and how did you come to co-found this?
Sure. Thanks, Yamini, first of all, for having me here. And I think this is a very important discussion. I believe that not because I work in the ecosystem, but in general, I think adoption as a parenting choice is picking up in India. And important conversations like these need to happen. I am the co-founder and CEO, as Annapurna mentioned, of Where Are India's Children. Well, we started Where Are India's Children along with, I have two other co-founders in 2019. It started as a digital campaign to actually find out why is it taking so long. And that in 2018, I think it was taking around 2 years to adopt a child. And most of the time they were talking about bringing home a 0 to 2, 3 or 4-year-old. And it was still taking time. So we kind of, Pratima and Smriti, who are the other co-founders, decided to look into this, and they did some research and started a campaign, a digital campaign, from July 2018 through ending on November 14th. The whole idea was to raise awareness about the fact that there are challenges in the adoption ecosystem and why there are challenges. And we went on to do a child shelter study to understand why children in the childcare institutions are not coming into the legal adoption pool. And through that process, we said we need to do something bigger, right? It can't just be a campaign and we are saying, okay, happy that 1,200 people sent a message to their stakeholders and we are done. So that's where the genesis of Where Are India's Children? We started in July 2019. So we did pilots. No, we decided it was an evolving process, right? How do we solve this problem? And then chance conversation with people, advisors, like-minded people drove us towards technology. Then we realized that through our child shelter study also, there was a lot of manual tracking of children. And we decided that we'll take the use of technology. We built our own technology solution. Today, it is used in 3 states to digitize children's data in childcare institution. That means every child's data is entered in our system, and also identify children who are eligible for adoption so that they can be presented to the authorities and thereby either go into the legal adoption pool or some other outcome is possible for these children. So overall, it started essentially to actually, talk about why is it taking so long, for parents to adopt? Why is the wait time so long, right? Today, unfortunately, it is 42 months is the average wait time, and it has increased. It has not decreased. That said, 70% of the 35,000 parents are waiting for 0 to 2-year-old children, right? And those children, not to discourage people who have joined and are waiting for that number, there's about, I think, 40 children pan-India for 70% of 35,000 on any given day. It doesn't. Yeah. So children get adopted as quickly as they come into the pool, and so we also are great advocates of older children adoption. So through our work, because that is the pool which is getting ignored in the CCIs and they're growing up without a family. But that is a little bit about me. I'm also in IT industry. I worked for 18 years in the IT industry and transitioned into the social sector.
Fantastic. I think just to summarize the problem statement of Where Are India's Children, Meera and team are trying to bring 4 lakh children in India's childcare centers across the country who are not linked to, most of who are not linked to the formal adoption process that India has. There are 35,000 parents waiting at any point in time, right? And about 40 on any given day available for adoption that get placed, right? So this is a problem of huge magnitude and deep amount of complexity. And Meera and I will do another session where we'll be trying to raise funding for Where Are India's Children, where we'll delve into the root causes of this problem and what the team is doing to solve. But today's we will keep it focused on what is actually the process of adoption like for a family, for prospective parents, right? So, Meera, if you could walk us through, right? For starters, what do prospective parents look like who actually consider adoption as an option? Do they look like you and me? Or are they very different?
Yes, Yamini. So just to correct a little bit, 40 is not the total number of children in the pool. About 2,100 is the total number of children in the pool, though there are special needs. Age group, yes. So to answer your question, I think there's no direct answer. So I think of the 35,000 parents, I would like to believe that at least 80% of them are coming or are choosing adoption because it's a parenting choice. At the end of the day, adoption is just a parenting choice, right? I have a bio child. I have one whom we adopted. There are a lot of parents who are choosing adoption as just their way of, being a parent. And that is true to both the co-founders, Smriti and Pratima. Both have children through adoption. They don't have any bio children, and they chose adoption as a path to becoming a parent. I think more and more people are choosing that, especially if they have a bio child, they want to extend the family. They're choosing adoption to do that. Yes, there are a large section of people who do still believe that adoption is the last resort. Right. So we are hoping for the day when adoption becomes the first resort to be a parent. In fact, I think when I started thinking about adoption, I was early on. I think I was about 22, even before I got married. And that was always there at the background that I wanted to adopt. So I think a lot of parents are coming. So there's no profiling information available. So there are single parents who are adopting now. Right? Yeah. They're not married. The single parents, males are coming forward to adopt. So the demographics is huge, right? And But I think when we talk about adoption, and I've heard this myself. So when I said, we've adopted, and they ask, oh, you couldn't have children. So that's
Yeah.
the first question, because I think that's the mindset the society works with. It's not necessarily true, but that's the mindset people work with. But you're right. They all look like you and me. And I think it's a conscious choice you have to make. And it's an open-minded choice. It's not something like you'll say, okay, I'll treat the child as my own. No, the child is yours for life. It's a commitment. It's not a noble deed. It's not social work. It's a commitment, a responsibility, a different way of bonding, whatever you may call it. So adoption is a parenting choice at the end of the day. So it is a very conscious choice. And in fact, in a few forums, I have discouraged people not to adopt because of the way they think. Right.
Because
So
you don't want to do it to save the world. Don't do it to save the world.
Exactly.
Do it because
You're
you
not
want
doing,
a family,
yes.
and this is just a way of having a family. Yeah.
And you're not
So
doing it to save the child either. So
exactly. Don't
I
try to
think
do
that's
that.
the whole.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. I keep joking about how, there is so much conversation that happens when you're considering starting a family about the process of getting pregnant and being pregnant itself. Very few realize that the real work starts after the baby arrives, right? And a lot of that is heavy lifting. There are
Yes.
complications like postpartum depression, like emergency
True.
deliveries, many complications, right? I think having taken both the paths myself personally, I genuinely feel I was way more present in the case of adoption as
Yes.
a parent for the child. In the biological situation, I had to take care of myself while I had to write, and it was very confusing as a personal experience for me. But I completely agree. It's a choice you make. You're not going to change the world by saving one child, so don't do it. I've had people actually ask me that, right?
Yes.
It's no, just you want to have a baby, and ultimately it's like, uh, you know, there's no difference between which way the child.
Yes.
Most of the work on parenting is a lifetime's journey, and the
Exactly.
first 3-6 months are a very short blip in the whole journey.
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
okay, so can you give us now what this actually means in terms of rules and guidelines? Like who is allowed to adopt? I don't think many know this actually properly. Is there an age limit? Is there a marriage criteria?
Yes. So as I mentioned, single women can adopt both a male child and a female child. And the maximum age they can adopt till is 55. If
Okay.
they are single, right? Both male and female. And single men can adopt only male children. And the same thing, 55 is the limit. The rule says that married couples, you can't, live-in couples can't adopt. You can't say, I have a partner, I want to adopt. So marriage is necessary if you're a couple, and you should be married for at least 2 years, and you should be 25 years and above to adopt. Right.
Got it.
So the composite age can start with the composite age. I think doesn't have a bearing as long as you are married for 2 years, right? But
Got
the
it.
maximum composite age, that is both parents, should be 110. Right? Anything beyond, you will not be allowed to adopt. And then there are different age criteria for people with different ages can only adopt certain age group of children. Like now they have actually reduced the age for children to adopt 0 to 2. Earlier, I think it was 90. Now they've made it 85 as a composite age, and 40 is the age to adopt as a single woman. So they are encouraging older children adoption by
That's the
reducing the age
maximum. That is the
maximum.
maximum.
Correct.
And they're
After
doing
that,
this so that,
the
yeah.
correct.
So the age difference in loosely the age difference between you and a child, if you are a single mom trying to adopt,
Should be
is
25 years.
okay. No, you should be minimum of 25 years, but the age difference between you
Yes.
and the age of the baby is roughly 40 years or so, right? So if
Correct.
you're 45, you can adopt an older child in the 4 to 6 year category.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And same
So it
thing for couples.
increasingly increases.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
increases as your age increases. The age of the child also
Yeah.
increases in that
I'll
even
throw
number.
in, Vymo is known for its nudges to our end users. I'll throw in a nudge here. I think the important thing to realize is that usually people park this decision as an option until you have tried every biologically possible option, right? People go through different kinds of fertility treatments, IVFs, etc., and then say, I will look and explore. I've seen people go through egg freezing, many things before they actually explore this. My suggestion is you're again hitting around an age limit related issue. Right? So get into the queue and then try everything else. get into the queue if you're considering, if this is even remotely. You can always debate this over 3 years while you're waiting, 2 or 3 years, right? You have enough time to debate this
Yes.
out.
Yeah.
Right. So
And especially if you want the 0 to 2 year
especially if you want the
age
younger,
group. Yeah.
right? Which as a first-time parent, you may want that experience,
Yeah.
right? So, Meera, tell us this, like, what are the choices you have in terms of loosely, not the right framing, but when you're deciding what kind of kid to adopt? I've heard this question very often,
When you
like whether it
mean
is
what are the
age
choices?
or region, gender, etc. What are the
So, Tara has changed the rules a little bit. Earlier, it used to be you could choose 3 states and anywhere in India, that kind of thing. Now they go by zones, right? So it is essentially based on the birthplace or the address of the parents, both parents. So if, let's say, I was married to an Assamese, I could potentially even adopt from Assam, one of the northeastern states. And if my husband is from Telangana, I could, also adopt from Telangana. So they are doing this for to keep the cultural ethnicity, and the zones will come up automatically once you register based on your permanent address, etc. It will come up automatically. So you don't have to break your head which zone to choose, etc. The other thing is, of course, there are certain states in the country which have potentially more children, right? For example, Maharashtra has always been a state where there are more children for adoption, right? So a lot of people tend to think like that, but unfortunately, because of the rule change, you're not able to select that this one. That said, if you are adopting an older child, those rules don't really matter because I can adopt somebody from Northeast if I'm still in Telangana because I've chosen to adopt a 13-year-old or 14-year-old, right? Because they are chosen from a separate list. Okay, so that is the difference. But yeah, as such, there are healthy children in the list, children with special needs on the list, and older children, siblings. So there are different types of children. And I think to add to what you said just now, and this is a recommendation I have given, a suggestion I have given when I talk to parents is if they're, let's say, 40, 42, and they do want to adopt siblings, right? Or they do want siblings for their children, I say consider adopting siblings, right? Because you get 2 children for the same wait time, and there are siblings available on the list. Of course, there are older siblings available. A lot of parents do say that 4 to 6 is their choice of siblings, but what happens is with siblings, when we say 4 to 6, one of the child can be between 4 to 6, but the other child could be older or younger.
Yeah.
So that's something they'll have to. So we've had instances where one of the child was 5, but the sister or the other sibling was about 10 or 11. Right, that also happens. So you have to be prepared for that when you are also choosing siblings.
And how many kids can you adopt, Meera?
Now it is two healthy kids, and if you do have two kids already, you can only adopt a child with special needs.
Got it. And typically, what are the wait times that people should expect?
For 0 to 2 years, unfortunately, the wait time, I would actually say 0 to 6 years, the wait time is anywhere between 3 to 3.5 years. So that's normal. But again, older children, based on the age groups, your wait time comes down. And I've known people, or rather parents, who brought home children, siblings, 8 to 10 years old, 10 to 11 years old within 3 to 4 months.
Got it. And what are the typical challenges? Like, what are the myths when you're adopting an older child, and what are the real challenges? What would your advice there be?
I would like to say there are, no, all of them are myths, but in interest of people. So I think one of the things what happens is, and this happens specifically, I think, with older children. So you bring home, let's say, a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, anything the child does, we think it is because of adoption. And that's not entirely true. It is age appropriate. And if you learn to connect with the child appropriately with that age, it is actually a beautiful phase to connect and actually see through the child through to adulthood. The challenge is there, yes, because these children have lived in institutions, right? Imagine living in a institution 5, 6 years, and then you come into a family environment. It takes time to adjust. So we call it a cocooning period. So give the child at least 6 months before you say, okay, this adoption is bad. We want to return the child, and this happens often. So I think at least a minimum 6 months to for the child to adjust and see how a family lives, how to integrate, right? And it's a parent's responsibility to integrate the child into the family, not the other way around. We expect that, okay, we brought them home. What is there? They should just start living their life as usual. But that's a very, very unfair expectation from these children. They've had a past, and who knows, they could have had a traumatic past, right? So I think these things need to be taken into consideration and appropriately handled. So
Yeah.
I always say that there are 3 P's in this, right? It's possible to raise a child, who's older. You need perseverance, you need patience.
Yeah.
And
Which also you need with your own
guidance.
biological kids of that age.
Exactly.
It's no different. I
Exactly.
think though first-time parents do not realize that it all feels
Yes,
very new.
exactly.
But think of them more as
Yeah.
a friend rather than as they're older. Think of
Yes.
them more as a friend, who needs to be like you were brought into your husband's family, your husband was brought into your family,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Similarly, a child is joining as a friend in your family rather than, pure parental kind of a relationship and expectation.
Yes.
Uh,
No, you bring up a good point. I've compared adoption of older children to marriage. So you get married and you're adopting an older child. One way or the other,
yeah,
the husband adopts the wife. So
yeah,
it's the same. I think we just don't give it enough thought and importance, and we don't. I think it's somewhere in our hearts, and that's the stakeholders, everybody. We don't really believe that older children might need a family.
yeah, yeah.
Shelter hai, bus hai types.
I
So
think if
that
it's,
is, I think,
yeah,
unfortunate.
I think there are counselors who can help with this, right?
Yes.
Who can
Yes.
actually coach you into what it means to be a parent, especially if you're a first-time parent of an older adoptive kid.
We run these sessions. So
You
just
run this
to,
session.
we
So
run these sessions every second Saturday of the month.
oh,
Yeah.
fantastic. So I think if anyone,
Yes.
they can reach out to Meera on this.
Yeah.
Uh, absolutely, right? So, Meera, now simplify this for us. What exactly does starting on adoption as a problem? I keep telling people that it's a simple form, just fill it up and then you can wait for a bit of time. But can you break it down into actually
Sure.
what the steps are? Like today, after this session, if people had this even vaguely in their minds, if they had to act on it,
Yes.
what would they do next?
Sure. I'm putting up a website on the chat box so people can
You can
copy
share your screen
paste.
also if you want
Yeah.
to.
So yes, I can share, but I think it will be easier
Yeah,
to
yeah.
explain in steps. So the first step, of course, you mentioned there is a form where you register as a parent, and I'm catering to the resident Indian parents. I'm not talking about intercountry adoption here. I'll only talk about resident Indian parents who are Indian citizens and are registering. So you have options, all kinds of options. I mean, in terms of NRIs, resident Indian, OCIs, etc. So you click on your option, and there is a form which asks about basic details, right? Your name, address, spouse's name, address, age, and all that is supposed to be filled up.
Right.
And
I'm trying to share my
so
screen. Can
there
you
is
see?
scaring. You go below. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
do that too. You can do
Yeah,
that
so
too.
I'm on the
Yes,
kara.wcd.gov.in and I'm going to resident Indian parents and I'm saying, hey,
new
new
registry.
registering
Yeah.
parents,
Yes,
right? And I'm going to the last option, register online. So this is
correct.
the form that we are speaking about. It gives me
Yes,
important information that I need to read. And then you're asking for some basic questions. I want people to actually see this form because they assume this is so complicated, right? You are answering basic questions on, your basic demographic questions. You're uploading an ID. You're uploading if you have any biological children, what are the details? How many children do you have? Contact details. You're selecting an agency. Here, you based on your location, I guess you'll get mapped to agencies. You'll pick an agency close to you. These are the agency folks.
yes,
The workers, the social workers here will come to your house, verify that the details you have submitted are correct. So they'll ask for documentation, ID cards, etc., to verify that, and this is to prevent human like trafficking and so on. It's more to contain that, right? And then you're giving your preference. Here you're picking age groups. I've not filled anything, so it's not showing me the options, but there'll be certain age groups, health status, special needs versus healthy, normal, what they call normal, gender preferences, child category, single or sibling, and you're picking the zone or state related, right? And your
yes,
motivation, you're giving a small blurb. And suppose that you're just giving your ID, right? So that is it, right? Meera, you submit this
yes.
form and your clock for 3 years starts.
No, I
Okay.
think there's
What
a,
happened?
so
Sorry.
if you saw the HSR, right? It is called a
Yeah.
home study. So a social worker or a district child
Comes
protection
and
unit, you can choose any one of them. You can see what is happening is a lot of districts do not have a specialized adoption agency, right? So they've also now given the option of a district child protection unit. Every district in India has a district child protection unit. So one of the social workers from there will come to your home, as you
and
mentioned,
verify.
and do the entire process. See, I think they'll ask the same questions, motivation for adoption. Sometimes they do talk to neighbors to do some character, checking and things like that. If there is extended family at home, they'll talk to them, what kind of people you are, etc. They'll have a form they fill, and that is submitted. It's not known to you what they fill in the form.
Yeah.
That is sealed and given back to the SAR. Right. And after that, once they upload the HSR onto the portal
That's when
against your name,
that's when the
that's
time
when the
comes.
clock starts ticking. But the registration date will remain the time when you have
You
uploaded all the
fill this
documents.
form.
Because
Yes.
not fill the form.
Oh, the
After
upload of
filling
the
the
documents.
form, you have 30 days to upload the documents. So when you go to the form, initially you had a screen which tells you what are the forms you need to upload, right? There'll be about 14 forms or so. And believe you me, I think I keep telling people this. We buy a house, they ask us for like tons of
Exactly.
documents,
I think it
right?
takes a
This is
lot
a
more to
child
get a
you're
home
bringing
loan.
home, right? So you're bringing a child home. So obviously there will be some proof,
Yeah.
they are asking for. Most of them are address proof, financial statements, things like that, which are normally there with us most of the
Yes.
time, bank statements. And so you upload them and then the HSR is scheduled. They've increased the time for the HSR. It is now 60 days. So within 2 months, the SAR, the DCPU has to do the HSR and they have to upload it within the 2 months. Right. And then the waiting time starts. So there's always a question that there's a wait list number you're given. So what happens is now the waitlist number is just an idea. It is not something set in stone. It's not like it should reach to 1 and you will get a referral. It is the registration date which carries weight and how many parents have registered with the same preferences as the parent who's applying on that given registration date.
Yeah.
Right. So there are so many parents, right? 35,000 parents. So a lot of them are in the same, registration date. And that's where the next in line, the queue happens based on the registration date.
Yeah.
And now the Carings portal also shows which is the current registration date children are being processed. So which has made it easier for parents to anticipate when they could potentially expect the child home.
Yeah. And also, I think the system gives you flexibility. Go change your preferences over time also, right? There's
Yes.
a certain number of
3
times you can
times.
change it. So you don't have
3
to
times.
discuss this endlessly before you fill it.
Yes.
Get into the queue because the date you start this process matters.
Yes.
Right? And you can over time change if you have a gender preference change or an age preference change. There is also an immediate placement list. Right.
Yes.
Meera, tell
Yes.
us about this. If someone wanted to short
Yes.
circuit the 3 years because they were a little bit more open in terms of
Yes.
certain options, what would that look like?
Sure, thanks. So essentially, they get three chances to change the preferences, right? A combination of preference, so whatever they want to change, they get 3 chances. And the immediate placement list, once the HSR is uploaded, right, then the portal opens up with all the lists that are available. So there are 3 different types of lists on the Carings portal. One is immediate placement, one is children with special needs, and one is what they call a 7-day portal. So essentially, the idea is they keep refreshing the 7-day portal with children whom you can reserve. And this is irrespective of what your preferences are. Right. So essentially, let's say you're waiting for a 4 to 6-year-old and you've seen this list in the immediate placement list, a child who is maybe 10 caught your eye or a child who is 8 caught your eye. You can actually reserve that child. And if for some reason you do not accept the child, there is no penalty on your wait list.
Yeah.
Okay, you will get a referral in the normal. So your referral can still be in the normal way you get it, but you could also explore these lists. And immediate placement, generally what is happening is most of the older children go into the immediate placement list. So children above 11, you will find them in the immediate placement. Siblings, you will find more than 2, 3, 4 siblings are there who are in the list. And the children with special needs, of course, are children with special needs from the mildest special need to the most challenged, extremely challenging. So it's always good to look at this list also.
Yeah.
Maybe there is some condition you could manage. There's a treatable condition. There's a there's an option where you could potentially bring home a child who needs some, correction, and the child will be okay.
Yes.
So with an open mind, scan through the special needs list as well.
Yeah,
And the
because there are
7-day
situations
portal is
like left
refreshed.
lips and cleft lips and
Yes,
lazy eye, which are actually medically correctable, right? But for
correctable.
whatever
Yes,
situation that they went through, they were not able to do it at birth, or
yes,
and had to be added to the special needs queue. But I
correct.
had friends who have actually, in less than 6 to 12 months, reserved kids from the special needs queue and short-circuited the whole 3-year process.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's
So a lot
actually,
of parents, I know, I think even because they want younger children as well, they have chosen to adopt low birth weight children. Low birth weight children also are placed in the children with special needs list, because you do not know of the development delays is why they are this thing. But most of them saying, okay, there
yeah,
will be
very
challenge. See, I
nutrition.
think the other thing I do believe is, let's say be no, you've given birth to a child, right? There is not knowing what
Guarantee.
the child's
Yeah.
development delays are later also. So just being open helps, and a lot of children, a lot of
Yeah.
Indians are now looking at the special needs list closely. As you
Yeah.
said, it short circuits the whole process of the 3-year wait.
So Meera,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are worried about, what if I get home a child and, suddenly realize there are medical issues, etc. I was not mentally prepared for this. I don't know what to do. Right. And usually, so there is anxiety around that. So can you help us understand what is the medical verification process Kara actually allows and supports?
Yeah. So for the 0 to 6 years children who live in specialized adoption agencies, the medical examination report is quite thorough. At least I would say about 80% of the time, right? And if they are younger children, parents do tend to again do a medical test and do everything. We suggest, and this is a suggestion, of course, and each parent will operate according to their own, their own preferences. See, unnecessary medical tests puts a burden on the child, right? So it's also about taking the SAS permission, taking the child, poking the child, prodding the child, etc. So if we can take the medical examination report, and because the medical examination report has to be current within 6 months. So every 6 months, there is a medical examination report done, right? So it is supposed to be current specifically for the 0 to 6-year-old, and the SARS do a fairly good job. There have been instances where children with special needs have been labeled healthy, and parents maybe unknowingly have brought them home and found that there is a condition. There have been disruptions due to that. They send the child back because they do want healthy category. So there are, I wouldn't
But
call
there are
them.
provisions for Kara to support that scenario. Like
Yes,
there are all
yes,
categories of special needs that, like, for example, children with a
yes,
cleft lip are probably, right? So if they fall under any of the health categories that come under special needs, um, you can return the child. It's tough to say that, right? But you
you
can. I mean,
can, yes,
that's your ultimate
you can.
backdoor on this one, right? But
Correct, correct.
and I also know that unless it's changed now, I also know that once you reserve the child, you have 48 hours to reserve the child. You can request, and many SARs actually agree. For example, if this SAR is in a very remote place where within that district there is truly no clinic set
Mm,
up that can actually do some of the critical tests, they are open to getting you a permission
yes,
to
yes,
go out
they
of the
do.
district and actually get these tests done as a one-time clearance, right?
Yes, one of the social workers will accompany with you
They will
with the child,
accompany
and you
the
can
child
do
and they
that.
help you.
See, sometimes the medical examination report, a lot of parents, what they do, they send it to their known pediatricians, right? And
Exactly.
the pediatrician will look at it, evaluate, speak, and then, give the go ahead. So there are a lot of options through which you could
Yeah.
get the child evaluated, medically as well.
Yes.
But unless there is something very glaringly wrong,
Yeah.
it is not wise to
Yeah.
take the child and
Yes.
get this done. But otherwise, yeah, if you feel very strongly about it, because different parents have different, as I said, preferences, very strongly about it, the SAR does allow, and they could potentially do the tests again. And as I said, it's always current. So every 6 months, the SAR has to do a
Has to
medical
do with
exam
this. Yeah.
for these children. So, and all those are part of the medical examination report. right?
Yeah.
And if the child is special needs, and Kara has introduced that new concept or rather rule, if the child is special needs, then the child has to be certified by a chief medical officer of the district. So now the faux pas or the mistakes which were made earlier are reducing because they can't really hold the CMO accountable then, right? So they are doing a thorough job with the changing rules. But yeah, it's done properly, and it depends on what the parent wants. And some SARs are a little not happy when you say we want to get this test done, that test done. But the easiest way I would say is get a medical examination report, send it to your pediatrician and talk
see
to them
the
about
result.
the child and see how things play out.
Yeah. And also there is this small window where in those 48 hours that you have to confirm a child, whether you're reserving the child or not, you can actually choose to go visit the child also, multiple SARs.
Not unless you reserve the child.
Yes,
No
when you
SAR will
reserve
allow unless you reserve the child,
reserve
which
the
is
child.
fair, right?
Otherwise,
Yeah,
yeah,
which is fair.
yeah.
So only if you reserve the child can you visit. So can you
Exactly.
visit the child? And the visiting also, they expect you to get some documents. So let's say, well, if you waited 3 years and then you have been referred a child, your reports from the 3 years back have gotten outdated, right? So they expect you to print the reports, get new reports, etc.,
Mhm.
and submit it with the home study report which the social worker has failed. So you
Got it.
take all this to the SAR where you're adopting the child from, so that
Got it.
and then they will let you see the child. And there is an adoption committee meeting that happens before the child is handed over.
Child is adopted.
Yeah,
So
with the pre-adoption foster care agreement.
yeah. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, and then there are some legalities you have to pass through to make, right? So we will skip that part of it because mostly it was about getting folks aware of even getting into the process.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Meera. We'll just quickly poll for any questions here. There is one question from Mamta Sharma. While much has improved, we often still see racism and bias against adoptive kids. How can parents prepare their children for such experiences? Asking for some tips
Okay.
from parents who do come across people around asking uncomfortable questions. Yeah.
Thanks, Mamta, for asking that question. I think the biases and the prejudice exist because I believe the parents themselves are sometimes uncomfortable of the fact that they have adopted, right? The way we look at it, right? And I've seen many adoptive parents, and it goes the same goes to me, right? As an adoptive parent, what happens is, I think the confidence you exude that I've done the right thing, nobody, it's almost like a Hindi film dialogue. Kisi mein dam hi nahi hota ki, they will come and tell you ki kyun kiya. Or even talk to the child in a rude manner. So the other thing we constantly talk about in adoption is positive identity, right? Disclosure and positive identity. So it also depends on how you're disclosing to the child about adoption and how you're creating the positive identity that adoption is not bad. Adoption is not like, what you call is not racist, not anything, right? Unfortunately, there are adoption jokes, siblings, this. During Rakhi, you will see a flood of this, right? Unfortunately, and there is a band of parents who is taking exception to this, and they're constantly going behind whoever is doing this, be it Amazon, be it Flipkart, whoever. There will always be a set of people, right? So, for example, it is not necessary that because they're adopted, they face that, right? Even bio kids, or if we have biological children, and let's say even, and for argument's sake, right? Maybe I am dark, my child is fair, or my child is dark, I am fair. There is always that, oh, your child is so dark. So it is. I think it's a societal, the way the way. So I do believe, right? When initially I had adopted, and somebody will come and tell me I couldn't have done it. I said, okay, fine, but I did it. So I think it's about saying what you can do, and they're always looking at their own selves and wondering why they haven't done it. I look at it in a psychological way. So to answer your question, I think we have to be confident, right? And equip our children how to answer those questions if they are faced. And that will only come through the positive identity thing. So, for example, I think just to give you an incident with what happened with our son, he was 7 when this happened. And I think it happened in a classroom. And they were talking about, for some reason, 7 years old, I don't know why they were talking about the DNA. But so the teacher was explaining, and our son just got up and said, and some friend said Akash should get Akash is his name, DNA checked. And he stood up and he said, he's telling that because I was adopted, right? And I see it as an education point. So he came home and he was very thrilled. He did it in front of 37 children. And everybody, he said at lunchtime, came and said, what is adoption? And he actually, and 7-year-old, believe you me, he educated them what is adoption, right? So I think that positive identity in children has to be created so that they fend for themselves, right?
Yeah.
We as parents can't be with them 24/7.
Yeah. And bullying, this is just one category of bullying. Bullying
Yes.
is 1,000
Is
times
1,000
many
times,
different.
yes.
You really don't need an excuse for being a bully, right?
Yeah.
Another question. I'm a widow with a simple economic background. Can I adopt a child? I already have 2 kids. So I think you should separate this as a, if you already have 2 kids, maybe just repeat the point on what your options are. But also I'm a widow. Let's expand that a little bit into if folks who are separated and divorced. I've heard that
Yes.
question asked quite often because that's when they really feel like the clock is ticking for them. Yeah.
So if they're separated, they cannot, one of them cannot adopt. They have to have an official divorce decree with them.
Yes.
It has to be a formal separation with a divorce decree. If they are divorced and still single, they can go ahead and apply as single parent, right? The same thing with a widow. But I think, not unfortunately, the same rule applies. You have 2 children, you can only adopt a special needs child.
Yeah.
So the rule is similar to all the parents or the single parent. And when you say simple economical background, for now, there is no ceiling on financial stability in the rules, right? They don't really see, each state has their own financial ceiling. So it depends on what financial ceiling you fall under and which state you apply. But you will not be able to adopt a healthy category child. You will be able to adopt only a child with special needs.
Okay. Okay, that was the list of questions that we've had, Meera. Thank you so much for making time for this, and all the best to you and your team. More power to you.
Thank you.
And thank you
Thank
everyone
you so
for
much.
joining us today. Thank you.
Thanks, Yamini. Thanks, Annapurna.